Hi, welcome back. Today we talk about assets. What are the benefits? What are the against about using assets? And also how the use of assets can increase our creativity. How can we use the creativity to make a different game thanks to the assets? But we'll see this as the best part at the very end. Since I don't want to talk about any specific asset store, I'm going to give an example using my website. On my website I sell also some assets. I don't have many, but there's still a little bit of asset we can use as for our example. As you can see, there are these 4 assets and templates here, and they're quite good for us for start for our discussion. So what are the advantages about using assets? Let's start with first the benefits about using assets. So first of all, assets are low cost. It's much cheaper to buy assets that are pre-made compared to ask to someone to make a personalized art for you or audio track and so on. Or otherwise, if you have the skills, of course you don't have to waste time in doing. That is the second important thing, because when you buy asset, they're already there, just the time to download, and then you are ready to go. Another benefit about using assets is that they are great for quick prototype. They are good to just show, not only for you to understand or for your test to show the mechanics, but also if you are searching for investors, it's still better to have some placeholder art actually similar to your idea rather than just use squares or circles, something like that. So it's much easier to demonstrate the mechanics you want to create in this game. Assets are also great to compensate the lack of your skills. So, for example, in my case, amongst all the skills necessary to develop game, the audio part is the one that has a lower skill compared to the others. And for me, it's much easier to buy sound effects and music rather than just make the buttons by myself or study to improve my skills on that field. So you can understand that there are a lot of benefits about using assets that are pre-made. So let's pretend this is a one asset store, and here you can see I have 4 assets. This one is a pixel art. First one, of course, no. The second, third, the fourth assets are pixel art. So aside for the first one, so I can use these 3 for make my game. But as you can see, this one is first of all is not my art, but secondly is not really matching with the other 2 art. Therefore, I'm not going to use this for my game. I want to use this art with the spaceship for my game because it's pixel art, and this font here that's still pixel art I can adapt for my game. So I have the advantage of I have something ready here with my game for make a 8-bit shooter style game. But of course, it's not everything is perfect. For example, sometimes you might have some disadvantage. In this case, I'll show you here. I have only buildings in this asset to create my level. And therefore, if I want to do something different that is not just with building, this asset doesn't provide me any help. So the other asset instead is this sprite font here. It comes in different color combinations, so 36 color combination, but this is not automatically matching the game I can do with these assets here. First of all, this asset, if I want to create, for example, level inside the enemy base or inside a cave, I need to first of all create extra images for the asset because this is just building, so it's not enough. But I also have another problem to think about. So the issue is that as I have this asset here, it's not that I can necessarily combine with other assets I bought or I have already with me. Because maybe see this is different style of a drawing, it's not really matching the game, or perhaps even if the assets come from the same author, the person use a different style, or between even worse, different artists, the art they're going to do is not necessarily matching each other, so it's not really always a straightforward process. Also, you have to consider the palette of the game, of the assets, sorry, because this palette here is not the same palette that is present on this sprite font here. So, as I said before, not necessarily you can match the two things together, but there are also some advantages about these things. Let's see, anyway, the opposite side from a different point of view. So yes, in this case I don't have the art for the caves, I don't have the art for the enemy base, but compared to start from scratch, if I use this asset, I already have some images here ready to be used. I have already all the bullets, all the spaceships, all the power up, all the life bar, all this kind of art here. I don't have to create from zero, and then I can use it straight away. Then the only thing I will have to do is just to create the extra missing part. So yes, you still have to create the missing assets, but it's still better than start from zero, because especially if you don't have money to pay someone to make a customized art, or you want to do by yourself, but it's too much overwhelming to start to do everything, you still have already a solid base to start with, and then little by little you can add all the things you need, and basically you're going to save a lot of money. So it's still better than nothing, I would say. Another disadvantage of using assets is that you are not the only one using the assets, because of course this graphic and art, music, sound effect, whatever, is sold to many people, and is sold usually more than one store. So you can understand that maybe thousands of people might have the same assets as you, or maybe not thousands, hundreds. Especially if one of these games become popular, then of course people will recognize that you use the same assets as them. But it's not too bad if you think, because you can still use these assets as a base to create something on top. So let's say you buy an asset with a sword, then you, from this basic sword, you can just little bit of color, and then you can make a fire sword. So a fire version of the sword, you can add another effect, having a glow of the sword. In this case, like be a spectra weapon or something like that. Same thing with the audio. You can have different files, audio file, sound effect, you mix them together, you get a different result in the end. So it's not too bad. So always we talk about disadvantage of using asset, but if you think about it, you can turn the disadvantage in actually advantage. Another thing important to mention is that not all the assets are necessarily low cost. Yes, some are also expensive, but what I'm referring to is that some of these assets, actually there are a lot of them, they are actually very is useful in two ways, because not only they are already pre-made, but also they are free. And therefore, yes, there are a lot of free assets that are not very good, but also there are some assets that are free, they are very good. For example, in my case, I used in the past more than once some audio track, and they was actually very good. And the only thing I had to do, since they are free, is that to credit the person that can create the assets. So if you think about it, it's like having worked together with another person on the game and just put both of your names on the credits. So it's not really a big issue just to add the name of the person that make the asset for you for free. So why not? That is another good thing about using asset. And then if you think about that, in the end, it's no experience. You can have free assets. You just write the name of the collaborator. You don't have to pay any money. It's perfect. So not only low cost, but also free. Save time and money. Okay, now let's see instead how can I adapt with just a little effort this font here to match with the style of this asset here. So it's very quick, it doesn't take a long time, and this kind of thing will save the time in the end. So this is the palette of the spaceship asset. So all the colors. This is one frame of one of the spaceship. Then this is one of the bullets, and this is the sprite font. Let's say I want to change the color of this sprite font. First of all, I go to pick the color from the palette of the spaceship. I take this green. I want to replace the green of the border with this one. See, now it's changed everywhere. And now I want to replace the red part with let's say white. Yeah, or there is the same. And I just with the bucket, that's it. So it took me a few seconds just to adapt this sprite font to the rest of the assets, rather than create one by one all the letters I need to do. So it's very quick modification. It's worth the few dollars you're going to spend to buy some asset. You know, can you imagine how much time I have to save to do this and the sprite? And then if I want to adapt anyway, even the sprite a little bit, I can adapt the sprite, especially if I had a small size like this one. It's really much faster rather than create everything from scratch, especially if you are not very skilled as an artist. So the important thing to think about when you mesh two assets together, two or more assets, is that they have to be cohesive. They have to be nice to see together. Don't mix assets that doesn't have any reason to stay together. Try to adapt the one that are a little bit similar, and maybe use some filter, use a little bit of modification with the art, and then everything will look much better, and then will look like if you haven't seen all the game as being created in that way, and not that you bought some random asset here and there. Now, talking about the creativity that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can see here that this asset is just an asset for horizontal space shooter. But let's see one example how I have created this asset, and then from here you can understand what's your first image when you see an asset. So I just remove the music, 1 second. So basically when you see asset like that, you think about a game like this. But this is not the only thing you can do with this asset. If you remember when I talk about the game jams in my previous videos, you will recall that I said that the restrictions are actually giving benefits to your creativity. And they are advantages for us. In this case, the restriction is that we have only the spaceship asset and the sprite font that we have just replaced the palette. Therefore, it seems that we can create only an horizontal space shooter with what we have. But if you use a little bit of imagination, you will see how with these two assets you can create a new game. And I will show you this in one moment. Now I switch to construct. Okay. This is a project I'm still working on that you might have already seen on my channel. I use this to create a tutorial for a card game with a battle grid. So as you can see here, of course the art is not final, so it's supposed to have robots and other type of cards. For now there are some numbers in most of them because I haven't finished to draw all of them. So if we found one robot here, okay, this is one robot. So think about this. Now I can replace robots with a spaceship, and I have actually a game that is totally different from what's supposed to be done with that asset, but I can use the same asset to create a card game now. Of course, if you something already done, like in this case, this template for make the card game, you need to adapt the art. So, for example, you need to increase the resolution of the spaceship, or you need to adapt the game itself with different resolution. But of course, if you start from scratch, you don't have to worry about this because you already created the game resolution according to your assets. Okay, now I go to Photoshop, everything ready here. I take the back of the card, just make it a bit bigger so I can work on it. And then I'm going to check the size, 80 by 120 pixels, okay. My sprites of a spaceship are 8 by 8, so I think 64 by 64 will be okay to fit inside the card. So I'm going to resize this one, just to make one test. 64 by 64, and then I go nearest neighbor. Okay, so I don't have an anti-aliasing effect. Will be sharp lines with for pixel art style, and then I'm going to remove all the part I don't need here for the back of the card. Basically, I just I select everything, I just leave the border. Now I'll do a little bit quickly while talking, so a little bit in a rush. Of course, you can do properly things, and then take a white background. It's already selected. Okay, wrong layer, and just put another one. Okay, so this card is done, so ready to be used. Now I repeat all the process for all the cards I need, and then I'll go back to you in a few seconds, so I don't keep you busy just watching one by one all the cards. It's not really point. So what's the lesson learned here? As you can see here, I have the game ready, new game with different assets than the usual. Yes, as you can see, it's you might have some adjustment to do, like for example, some of these sprites have a white color and I use a white on the background, so you need to do this, as you can see here, a little bit adjustment, but compared to start from zero, of course, it's much easier and much time saving. So as I said before, the lesson learned here is that the asset don't limit your choices. If you have enough imagination, you can do the opposite process. So first of all, you check the assets that you have, art and audio, then you filter the ideas and create a new type of game. So in this case, we have done from an asset from a shooter, we've done a card game, but you can do the same thing. You can create a puzzle game, you can create a turn-based game, you can create a matching 3 game, you can create a matching cards game, you can make a spot the difference game where you create maybe randomly the image or the background using many assets, many sprites, and then you do just a little bit of difference between the image on the left and the right. So it's just quite easy to I'm just saying this on top of my mind as they came in my mind. So, but really there is no limitation about your imagination. So it's not true what some people say, is that using assets you have very limited options. It's up to you as a game developer to find other ways to create things. You can create original games as mixing 2 different type of games, for example. And producing small games, you might be able to earn enough money to afford to pay for customized art and audio for your next game. So in the end of the story, yes, customized assets are always better, because when compared to other games, only us have the original style, but you can still create a nice game even with just asset. You have also to consider that what you can do with your time and budget, because not everyone have plenty of time and plenty of budget to use. So I think that's the important thing to keep in our mind. So that's it for today. I had other things to talk about, pro and cons about assets, but since they are quite common knowledge, I will leave them out to make the video a little bit shorter. If you have other important points that you want to talk about, write them in the comments so we can continue the discussion there. And I want to take again the chance to say thank you to everyone to support me on Patreon. And I want to mention also that it depends on the tier, like if you have a guard or above, you can get some of my assets for free. And lastly, as usual, you're really helping me a lot if you share this video amongst your friends that are interested in developing games or that they want to become full-time indie developer. So I will see you again for next week. Thank you again. Bye.